Hi, this is Aran Bhaskar at the beginning of this week, our 11th episode. And those of you who played Holi, celebrated Holi, and even those who did not, I hope your life is filled with resplendent colors. It's good to see you. And we begin this week with the clouds of war gathering on the international scene. Last weekend, this weekend, American planes went and bombed Yemen, and Yemen in retaliation said it would attack American ships and Israeli ports till Gaza aid was resumed. And they shot off several missiles, forcing America's warships to retreat from the Red Sea. The Red Sea is a zone of conflict. At the same time, last week, you had President Trump saying that he might annex Greenland and that he might take over the Panama Canal. So for a president to talk about no war, he's already got possibly 3 wars coming up, in addition to the ones that are already there. But that is not news for business. It's not strictly business, though it's going to have its impact on business. We take up other business stories today. And before I talk on the business story, let me introduce my co-anchors to you, Katya and Isha. And today we are talking about 3 very interesting stories. And the stories are, the first one, of course, is a story that has excited the capital markets. It's Adani Group planning to invest 1.1 trillion in India. The second story is an IndusInd, which has started warning depositors. And the third is on the government's IT policy, information technology policy, which involves a subsidy, a large subsidy, and that is something also that we'll talk about. Let's go to the first story, which I will talk about. Contrary to all the signals that we've been getting, the private investment in India is drying up. The Adani Group announced a surge in investments in India of 1.1 trillion. The Adani Group is a very interesting group because it's the second largest or the first largest at different points of time group in India, and it's the fastest growing group. And to make such a large investment even in depressed times is very exciting. The largest company in this group is the APSEZ, and the APSEZ is also interesting because you can see its profits growing even while its debt ratios keep on declining. And just yesterday, the group made its announcement that the Navi Mumbai Airport will begin operations from June this year. There's a lot happening because of this group, and I suppose India also will depend a lot on the kinds of investment he brings in, which are both capital intensive as well as labor intensive, which is what India needs. And that's the story that I have. And now we go on to the second story, which is that on IndusInd, and could I have Katya coming in?
So thank you, sir. And IndusInd issue has been worrying the markets, spooking analysts, and a lot more. But what we really have to be worried about is, will it also scare about possible depositors? So ideally, when stock markets are falling, bank deposits have to go up. They've not been growing as much as loans are growing for the last 2 years. It's been a cause of concern, but the faith that people have in banks might be a little bit affected because of this derivative loss of that has been reported by IndusInd Bank. It's at 2,100 crores, and so that the IndusInd is not the only problem. It's only been barely been a month since New India Cooperative Bank has also gone under its RBI has placed withdrawal restrictions. All these might play into the minds of depositors, thinking their stock market will withdrawing money from stock markets and putting it back into FDs, and that's going to be a big problem as our loan growth is pretty decent even now. So back to you, sir. What kind of impact do you think it will have on depositors' minds?
Well, I don't know what kind of impact it will have on depositors, but the government needs to work fast. The banking industry cannot afford any more bank closures.
Mm.
And if there was a problem, why did the RBI not locate it right in the beginning? Why was this not nipped in the bud? Why wait so long? And why make a brouhaha about it instead of settling it quietly? I mean, there are many questions. The IndusInd case raises questions that someone will have to answer. And the answers may not be very pretty. But yes, thank you. Thank you, Katya. Great story. And now we go to the third story, which is also a very important story, and that's by Isha. Isha, can we have you?
Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining in today. Today, I'm going to be bringing you a headline from Indian Express titled "In IT Policy Pipeline, Rupees 23,000 crore Electronic Subsidy Scheme for Value Add and Jobs." So, the IT Ministry has launched an ambitious incentive policy with an outlay of around 23,000 crores over the next 6 years for electronic component manufacturing. Through this policy, the government hopes to deepen domestic value addition within the electronics market by by targeting components such as modules, printed circuit board assemblies, lithium cell enclosures, resistors, capacitors, ferrites, and others. This scheme is also hoping to help with employment generation, aiming for the help scheme to help generate 91,600 direct jobs over the next 6 years. It plans to provide annual incentive payouts ranging from rupees 2,300 crores to rupees 4,200 crores, conditional on companies meeting investment, production, and employment goals. After the production linked incentive scheme for smartphone manufacturing saw success with companies such as Apple and Samsung entering the Indian market, we realized that the domestic value addition was still only about 15 to 20%, even though the biggest names in the world are coming to India. And the reason for that is that the components were had to be imported. In fact, after the introduction of the policy, the import values for key components and sub-assemblies, including integrated circuits, increased from dollars USD 29 billion in the financial year 2021 to 46.5 billion in the financial year 2023. So as you can see, it's almost doubled, or like increased by 1.5 times. Therefore, this scheme that incentivizes manufacturing electronics components locally would help further localize the entire supply chain and therefore increase the domestic value production, because it would allow companies to get the parts as well from India instead of importing them and then only assembling them in India. And the government hopes that after the scheme and after domestically producing components, we will be able to increase the value add to 30 to 40%. Not only that, electronic components can also hold significant export value for the country. So I think this scheme is promising. Let's see how it pans out. Sir, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Right, you, Aisha. It's a promising scheme, but like all promising scheme of the government, you have to be careful. The government's policies on IT are not entirely carefully thought out, because it's going into technology in semiconductors especially, which could be outdated by the end of this year. There are new breakthroughs taking place. And when the government guides people and gives subsidies for certain products, you get into a situation where you promote a technology that may not be the latest technology, or that may not survive the next generation of technologies. It's best to let industry decide this and not government baboons. And there's a second problem. This time, fortunately, the government has linked it to jobs. But the linking of the jobs is not such an important thing, because the IT sector, especially when it's components and not software, is not labor intensive. You need few people and very automated processes that take care of businesses. So saying that it's going to be linked to jobs is a nice idea, but look at it. Software is labor intensive. IT components is not labor intensive, is more robotics. And that will bring into play a lot of government policies on duty structures as well. Yes, even while we were giving the news, we've got questions coming in. And while this was not part of the news, why does Yemen become so important? Yemen is extremely important for several reasons. The first is geography. It is at the mouth of the Red Sea. If Yemen decides to stop trade, especially for Israel and the whole of Europe, the Red Sea can be blockaded. Secondly, Israel has tried bombing Yemen in the past. America has tried bombing Yemen in the past, and so has the UK. Yemenis are not easily deterred, and they have a high level of sophistication to produce missiles, arm missiles, and also look after the geolocations that missiles require. Already in the last one night, 8 missiles have been fired, and American ships have left the Red Sea immediately. And Yemen has said that they will start bombing Israelis' ports. Watch the war escalate. If America does not put a stop to it immediately, it could become a major flashpoint. Then the question is, Yemen, will it be supported by other Arab countries? Nobody knows. But the war is serious. And the 3 more flashpoints, in addition to the Ukraine and the Israeli flashpoints. And they are Greenland and the Panama Canal. So watch. Yes, there's a second question. Are there any ways to restore IndusInd Bank to its earlier strength? Yes, there are ways. As the old saying says, where there's a will, there's a way. If the government had a will, the IndusInd Bank could have been prevented from getting worse. Now, some time ago, something was missing in RBI's vigilance. If the government wants, they can save a bank, but then it depends on the will and not the ability. And that's why the IndusInd Bank case will be interesting to watch. What do you say, Katya, since you've been studying the subject?
So I think a lot more banks have taken a lot more haircuts in the past over loans that
Oh,
they have given, which
yes.
have gone to NCLT. So that is a bigger issue than actual derivative things. It looks like something has gone wrong with the rupee. Even last year when markets were doing really well, also rupee was not doing too great for the last 2 years. So some amount of loss was expected. It looks like a trade issue. So in 2,100 crores for such a well-capitalized bank is not too much of an issue, because people have taken, with Kingfisher and a lot of other loans that came later, they've taken huge haircuts. In fact, in all the loans, they've taken at least 90% haircuts. So I
Very
think
true.
as compared, and though all those banks have been rescued. So
Yes,
and now
very
they are
true.
back to profits. So I don't think that is an issue.
One of the oldest banks which has been there in almost every scam is PNB. The
Mm,
kinds of loans they've given, the bad loans that have been given a haircut is amazing. But
mm,
yes, you're right. If the government wants, it can do many things.
right, sir.
And then, of course, there's a question of the IT policy, which looks attractive, but it's a very interesting point someone has raised. But haven't you given some semiconductor units like Kane Semicons 70% the capital cost as grants? Yes, I'd almost forgotten that. But in Gujarat, which is a state that the center favors, this company was given a lot of money to the point of 70% of the cost of the plant itself. If somebody pays 70% for my plant and I have to put only 30%, why should I worry? It's the government that should be worried. I'm not sure how the plant is doing right now, but yes, the government should be careful in giving grants and not get reckless in the way money is spent. And that takes me to yet another question. Adani had hived off Adani Wilmar from the group recently. Should we worry? No. Adani Wilmar was targeted for a sale. Let me put it that way. If you remember, right in the beginning, once upon a time, Adani held several shops for retail. He realized it was not part of his core strategy, and he sold the plants to Reliance Retail. Adani is a group which evaluates projects constantly, and if they don't fit in with the strategic vision of the group, it's hived off. Wilmar was profitable. Wilmar was number 1 in the edible oils business. It was not a distress sale. It was a sale made carefully to make sure that the group committed itself more to infrastructure. Adani's forte is infrastructure now. Once upon a time, Wilmar looked attractive because they had synergies with the port. Now, it seemed a little odd. So when he sold it, it made sense. You were focused. It made sense also because you were cash for the group to expand in more focused fields. It was a good thing. And Adani's plans have always ensured that there's a lot of money that always keeps him coming into his projects, and each of his projects is profitable. Anyway, thank you for being with us. And thank you for logging in. Be sure that we'll come out with more interesting stories tomorrow and the day after tomorrow also. Every day of the week, we are there. Bring you more stories, news behind the news. And yes, do click the subscribe button. Do click the like button, because those are things that enthuse us tremendously. Thank you for being with us. See you tomorrow once again. Good luck to you.